What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Ty and Bob Pod. We're still going strong. The NFC North is no mas, completely eliminated, but the march goes on with this show. Your favorite Hall of Famer, Bob McGinn, is here to discuss all things Super Bowl 59. Bob, do you like using numbers or Roman numerals? I'm not sure where you
Well,
fall
in
down
my
on that.
later years, I wrote, that book. I started calling it the 48th Super Bowl, 48th. I do not like Roman numerals. Nobody's taught that anymore. They don't know what the hell they mean, right?
I know that's true. They're still used, obviously, but you know what bothers me more than anything, and I think that the NFL is finally breaking away from it and getting back to their roots. Remember how freaking cool all the funky Super Bowl logos were, like 80s, 90s, early
Yep.
2000s? Like they were great. Crazy colors, crazy designs. They'd play off of the host city in some
Yep.
form or fashion. And then all of a sudden, the NFL decided to get really boring and just insipid and bland. And every single logo was exactly the same silver, big block Roman numerals. Oh, you didn't want to buy a Super Bowl gear when it's looking like that. And I could be wrong. I think they've kind of gone back to making some cool designs in recent years. So
Have
that's
they?
a good thing.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll be down there. Well, I'll be down there in New Orleans
Awesome.
for eight days, Bob. Gonna put
Great.
our readers and listeners' investment into Go Long to good use. So thank you, everybody out there, for making it possible. We'll be reporting on all things Kansas City, Philadelphia, but also Radio Row. I mean, Radio Row is great to kind of surf around and run into players, coaches, whoever there and get some early reporting, get the seeds planted on some off-season stories. We'll have some deep dives, no doubt about it, on teams we discuss on this show and elsewhere. Okay, Bob, I've spent a lot of time talking about the Buffalo Bills. Was there a One Bills drive for locker room cleanup day? Wrote a column trying to make sense of this team wasting another year of Josh Allen's prime. We'll touch on the Bills for sure because we want to get your perspective. But I think this is a great opportunity to examine the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they're going for a three-peat. We're witnessing a dynasty, and we're witnessing perhaps the greatest player to ever play the sport when it's all said and done in Patrick Mahomes. So we're going to get Bob's historical perspective on all things Chiefs. Of course, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're in this matchup as well, and they're really interesting too. At first, I kind of was bumming out like a lot of people in terms of just the matchup itself and the stories it lends itself to. The more I researched both of these teams, how they got here, what goes into this rematch from just the Super Bowl 2 years prior, it's fascinating. There are so many compelling storylines to hit on as we get up to this game in New Orleans. But Bob, first, how did you watch Championship Sunday? I'm sure you refer to it as Championship Sunday, sponsored by whoever is sponsoring these things, right? TurboTax. TurboTax, that's right.
Yeah, that was great. Um, so I watched it down my basement. Pat really had very little interest. She was watching it upstairs for a while. And so I just watched it. I took about half as much notes I would have on a as I did on an NFC North game. So I got some stuff, and and yeah, they were pretty good games. I was really interested in them, and it was fun taking notes and really watching some players that I hadn't really studied that much. And then I went back and looked at it yesterday too. So it was interesting.
Yeah, I thought about going to Kansas City, but wanted to pour the investment into the Super Bowl. Having covered the Bills just locally here for their home games, and I knew that they'd have locker room cleanup day that next morning too. So that's a tough flight catching that in time. You remember those from Green Bay? I mean, flying across the country on the red eye to catch cleanup day from Seattle. But it was fun to. I was upstairs, on one television watching these games, and the kids are down with mom in the basement. So you kind of hear the chaos throughout the NFC Championship game, and maybe check in during some commercial breaks while we're live blogging there at the game day chat. But no, and the kids took in some football as well over a dinosaur matching game or two with Sunny. It was fun. And you know what? The bedtime did kind of match up pretty well. because they go down 7:30. So the Bills Chiefs game was kind of young, so you can kind of help out. Mom was definitely carrying the weight, putting the kiddos down, but they were troopers. And both games were interesting. One was compelling. I'd imagine we want to dive right into the Kansas City Chiefs 32-29 triumph of Sean McDermott's Buffalo Bills for the fourth time in 5 years. If you're listening to this by now, you probably have read some of the nitty gritty in our story. Osiris Torrance breaking down what Steve Spagnuolo did on that 4th and 5 is fascinating. I mean, all game, Bob, they're showing pressure to the right side and backing off of that pressure by the time they snap the ball. They do it again with the game on the line, and this time they bring it. So the Bills had a protection slide to the left and just fell right into Spags' trap, and that's why there were defenders in Josh Allen's face immediately. So you had that. And then you had the coaches fooling McDermott and Bobby Babbitt's defense on Patrick Mahomes' touchdown run. After the controversial spot, they go right down the field in 5 plays. No will, no resistance, no fight for Buffalo's defense. It's just lickety split to the 10-yard line, and Patrick Mahomes it runs it in for 10, and it looks simple. But when you watch it, I mean, they're pulling the right tackle to the left. They're in that diamond formation with a tight end to each side and a running back behind Mahomes. And he rides the fake and he takes off. And I mean, you've got Smoot, the Bills defensive lineman, just biting like crazy. He doesn't even know Mahomes has the ball. And Milano's flat-footed, so he's late. To me, what stands out is coaching. I mean, there's a lot that stands out with this game, but Kansas City saved some of their best stuff for the biggest moments, and they do that against the Bills time and time again.
So that's, Tyler, when I was on the beat, like the way you wrote that story Sunday for Monday on our Substack on Monday, it was an analysis of the Bills defense and what happened in the game and how they collapsed. And, those are the issues I would have been thinking about had I been covering the Packers in a game like that. But here I was on Busman's holiday, and I wasn't thinking those kind of themes or thoughts. I was just looking at players, enjoying life, just kind of, I didn't have to worry about winning and losing, decisive plays and moments. Didn't have to worry about that. When I read your column, it all kind of came back to me, Tyler. You did a hell of a job with that. But that wasn't what I was thinking about. And then today, as I mentioned to you, Tyler, what I was really into was how teams were built, and that's kind of the way I covered the Packers all those years. How did these guys all get here? I mean, you never hear anybody talking about a general manager or a personnel director. You don't hear that. You hear about talking about coaches and quarterbacks, and I get all that. But these players don't just snap your fingers and these guys appear. So many in Kansas City that has started this dynasty. So, the last team to win 3 in a row, you forget, is the Green Bay Packers, 2 Super Bowls and a third. And then the playoffs started in 1933, and that's it. Before the Super Bowl, nobody won 3. Green Bay won a combination of one NFL and 2 Super Bowls. So, okay, at the time, nobody knew who built those Packer teams. But it was Jack Vanisi, the draft guy who did all his work in the late 50s and early 60s. And that's how they had all these Hall of Fame players. So how did Kansas City get all their players? In their last 7 drafts under Brett Veach, their GM, they've drafted 47 players from 2018 to 2024. They have 2 Pro Bowl players in 7 drafts. Creed Humphrey, the center, has made 2, and McCole Hardman made it as a kickoff returner. So that's 6.4% of their players made the Pro Bowl. Tyler, that doesn't add up. The last 7 most recent drafts, they got a center and a kickoff returner. What? What happened? Where did all these players come from, right, T? Well, we know where they came from. They came from in the drafts in 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. in which they drafted 38 guys. 9 of them made the Pro Bowl. That's 23.7%, for a total of 38 Pro Bowl appearances in 5 drafts. Veach has had 7, and the Chiefs had 5 before he arrived. And those of you with a Packer background will know that John Dorsey was the general manager of the Chiefs from January of 2013 till he was fired in June of 2017. I mean, it's a remarkable record. He drafted certainly 3 Hall of Famers, maybe 4. And the guts of this, the underpinning of this entire operation, it's Andy Reid and these players. And the players, all right. Travis Kelce, a 3rd-round pick in 2013, 10 Pro Bowls, he's in the Hall. Chris Jones, 2nd-round pick in 2016, 6 Pro Bowls, 3 titles. He's in the Hall, Tyler. He's in the Hall. Tyreek Hill, 5th-round pick in 2016. He makes 8 Pro Bowls. He wins 1 title. He could be in the Hall. He's got a shot at it. And then Patrick Mahomes, they trade up from 27 to 10 in 2017. He's in 6 Pro Bowls, Hall of Fame. And like you said, Tyler, he might be regarded as the greatest player ever if he continues to win a couple more. So, and Dorsey got fired. It's a drafting record that really was phenomenal. His other Pro Bowlers were Eric Fisher made 2, Dee Ford made 1, Marcus Peters made 3, Mitch Morse made 1, and Kareem Hunt made 1. 9 out of 38 guys and 38 Pro Bowl appearances. What happened? He was hired at the same time Reid was hired, and immediately Dorsey made the move to trade for Smith, the quarterback. They didn't have a QB. They were coming off a 2-14 season in 2012, but with what's Smith's first name, Tyler, the QB?
Alex Smith.
Yeah. So with him under center, they improved to 10-6. They improved 8 games. 11-5. And in Dorsey's 5 years, they went 11-5, 9-7, 11-5, 12-4, 10-6. Playoff record 1-4. And then he was fired. They had been last in 4 of the previous 5 years when Reid and Dorsey took over. Dorsey had control of draft and personnel in his contract. Reid ran the entire coaching staff and the team. Reid's done a good job, but without Dorsey, he wouldn't have had the players to do what he's doing now, obviously. So there was he got fired, and Dorsey was fired in June of 2017. There was a power struggle, and it ended up Dorsey got fired and Andy Reid got extended. And the people I've talked to say that Reid kind of won a power struggle there with the owner, Clark Hunt.
A Bob Lamont client, right?
Yes, he was.
This is what we see from Bob Lamont clients. It's the head coach, final say, in charge, finding the GM to be his personnel man.
Lamont had Holmgren, and then he picked up Andy Reid as an offshoot of that, and away you go.
Sean McDermott in Buffalo.
Yeah, okay. So then Dorsey wasn't out of work long. He got hired in December 7th, 2017. So he got hired 6 months later. He was out of work. And then Jimmy Haslam hired him early in Cleveland. And he ran 2 drafts, 18 and 19, and then got fired late in the 19 season by Haslam. Okay. So let's look at the draft record in Cleveland, okay? So the Browns, in their last 5 drafts since Dorsey, they've drafted 36 players, and 1 guy made the Pro Bowl. That's 2.8% for the Browns. So the last 5 years, 36 guys selected, 1 Pro Bowl. That Owasu Koramau, the weak backer. Okay, Dorsey had 2 drafts. He selected 16 guys. 3 made the Pro Bowl, 18.8%. His Pro Bowl picks were Baker Mayfield. the first pick in 2018. No, he did not take Josh Allen. But Mayfield's now become a player. He's never be as good as Josh Allen, but he's better than, you got to say his career is a lot better than Sam Darnold at this point, and Josh Rosen, the other high pick. He took Denzel Ward. He's made 4 Pro Bowls, and he took the running back Chubb, who's made 4 Pro Bowls. So 3 Pro Bowl guys, and Cleveland hasn't done jack yet. Dorsey, 64. I see a lot of guys in their late 30s, early 40s getting picked. You know, people who knew the Packers for Dorsey's 20, 25 years there in the personnel department will remember what I wrote about him. And Ron Wolf said that was the best guy on character he had ever hired and been around. He said Reggie McKenzie was the best guy on pro personnel he ever was around, ever hired. And I think he said as a college guy, I can't remember what he ever said who was his best college evaluator. I can't remember that. But Dorsey was a worker, and everybody who knows him knows he can evaluate people. He ran into trouble with Haslam because he made a terrible recommendation on the head coach, Freddie Kitchens, who didn't last, was in over his head. Haslam also wanted Kitchens. Dorsey went right along with him. I think Dorsey could have swung that day. He didn't. It cost him his job. He's been with the Lions now since 2021. Ray Agnew is the assistant GM to Brad Holmes. There's another really important figure there. And then Dorsey. He's one of their top 4 or 5 people. Does mostly draft. And I don't know what his role has been on these selections, but I know he knows what he's talking about when it comes to players. And one more thing on the Mahomes trade. I mean, we're talking about maybe the greatest player ever, right, Tyler? So I wrote that long look back at Mahomes before the 2020 Super Bowl for The Athletic, in which I interviewed Chiefs people, went through all the scouts. You know, Chris Ballard was on that staff until late January when he became GM of the Colts. And Ballard strongly recommended, he loved Mahomes. Veach loved Mahomes. Dorsey loved Mahomes. In fact, Dorsey said the entire personnel department loved Mahomes, including Reed. So Dorsey said, great, we know our guy, but we're picking 27. How are we going to do this? So he made all the calls himself. And you know where you're going, Tyler, because you just wrote about it last week with the Bills. I did not read that story, by the way, because I felt I kind of knew it from one angle. And
you son of a bitch.
So he made all those calls trying to trade up. He called Arizona at 13, Cleveland at 12, New Orleans at 11, Buffalo at 10, the Bengals at 9, Carolina at 8, and the Jets at 6. And Dorsey had always made a ton of calls for Wolf and Ted Thompson in Green Bay. He's a people guy. He's a network guy, man. That's how he operates, and that's how he got this done. Finally, he found a trading partner in Doug Whaley, as you wrote, and they talked daily in the week leading up to the draft. The gentleman's agreement with Whaley would give the Chiefs number 10 in exchange for 27, a third-round pick, and a first the next year. And that's the way it went down. You know, people felt it was a gentleman's agreement. Nothing's in writing. Bills could have backed out of that thing. But there's an element of trust, Dorsey said, among people who've been in the league for a while. And he believed once it got by, who was it, number 7? Somebody at number 7, he knew they were in. The other QB was Watson, obviously, who went to Houston at number 12. Now, this was not a no-brainer, Tyler. When I pulled 16 personnel guys before that draft, Mitch Trubisky had 61 points. He was number 1. Deshaun Watson was second with 58. Mahomes was third with 56. And when 12 of them were asked who had the best chance to bust in this draft of the top guys, Deshaun Kaiser was the easy leader with 9. But of all those guys who went in the first, Mahomes was next with 2 votes. And so finally, towards the end, the only people who knew about what Dorsey was doing was Andy Reid and Clark Hunt. He confided in them, obviously. And like Bill Polian said, that was a very, very inexpensive price for that kind of move. He, meaning Whaley, gave the pick away. I'll get to you in a second, Tyler. So Dorsey said, Andy can teach kids how to play quarterback. You needed a quarterback like that to get over the hump because you had a head coach like Andy. Andy's a good head coach, and he's really good offensively. And Alex Smith was one of the greatest mentors of all time. And now this is in January of 2020, before Mahomes' first title. And I interviewed Ron Wolf about Mahomes. Now this is after his second year as a starter, right? Yeah, started back up in 17, 18 and 19 he started. This is entering the Super Bowl of his third year. And Wolf said, he has to survive the test of time. As far as the ability to play the position and having the talent to do it at, I hate to use this word, superstar level, Mahomes has these things. But Wolf added, he's played 2 years. Some people down through the years, after their first couple of years, they already had busts made up for them in Canton, and they never got there. They weren't worthy of that. We'll have to see what happens. So, Tyler, you know a lot about this deal, but it is, Wolf traded for Favre, and Dorsey traded for Mahomes, and these maybe are the two greatest trades in NFL history.
Spectacular rundown on a personnel man, a GM man, somebody that I'm personally not that familiar with. I was out there at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel 2011 through 2015. Didn't, our paths didn't cross, John Dorsey. And I've just, everything I kind of know about him is from research and reading your stuff at the JS and talking to people around the NFL. And the more I talk to people, the more my mind is blown that this guy isn't running a team right now and kind of gets run out of town. It doesn't make any sense. You just laid it out. The Mahomes trade alone, Jim Onis, we've had several podcast episodes talking about it. I've had several stories on it. Most recently, this past weekend after catching up with Doug Whaley again. And Doug brings up Dorsey multiple times. He's like, this is Doug saying it. He says, people need to know John Dorsey was the driving force behind the Chiefs trading up for Patrick Mahomes. Not only that, but he must have done a hell of a job keeping it close to the vest, Bob, because the Bills' calculated gamble here was, and just to kind of refresh, at that point, Doug Whaley, Jim Monis, Terry Pagula as the owner, they had hired Sean McDermott. Whaley and Monis more so kind of like led the interview process. Pagula hires McDermott in January. So then by the time the draft hits, McDermott had gained control of the final 53, final say. Like we say, he's a Bob Lamont guy. Whaley didn't think he was going to get fired right after the draft. I think Jim might have seen some signs here and there, but they were trying to work together, build a relationship. And that being said, so McDermott had the final say, but it's Doug Whaley kind of leading those trade discussions. And even though Terry Pagula loved Patrick Mahomes and loved him back to October of the previous fall, I mean, he's watching film of Mahomes. He's telling Whaley and Monis and anybody who would listen, like, this dude is special. They go to his workout in Lubbock. It's windy. It's crappy. He blows it out of the water. Dinner with Mahomes goes unbelievably well. His presence, all that stuff. But they just couldn't get to a spot where they were comfortable taking him 10th overall. I think that, McDermott didn't want to draft a rookie quarterback that high. He wanted to win in year one, and he wanted the message to be clear to everybody in the locker room. We're here to win and clean up this culture. And he has the final say, so that's the strongest voice. But also Doug and Jim have both been quick to say, like, we weren't that confident in Patrick Mahomes either, coming from the Big 12. That's the land of Graham Harrell and run and shoot. And a lot of those quarterbacks at that point flamed out in the NFL. Like, you hadn't seen a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes before ever bring it to the pro game. So they weren't comfortable taking them at 10. So what Doug Whaley said, and we wrote about it over the weekend, again, it's at golongtd.com. The middle ground was trading down If he somehow gets to the bottom of the first round, you take him there. There's less risk, and you have the first round pick next year. If he's not there, they like Tre'Davious White, who they ended up selecting on that cornerback out of LSU. So that I think that Doug Whaley as GM, uh, to a fault, honestly, always tried to kind of draft a player, make a decision that everybody was on board with. They did the same thing, trading up for Sammy Watkins a few years prior, 3 years prior, because in that draft, they couldn't really get to a consensus prospect that they all loved. Doug Marone's the head coach, but everybody could agree that Sammy Watkins was special. So they traded up, took him. You're doubling down on EJ Manuel, disaster. Anyways, similar deal here. This was something everybody could kind of agree on. So that's why they did the deal. But yeah, uh, Dorsey was the point man for that all, and he kept it close to the vest because Doug Whaley was still kind of hopeful that Mahomes would be there at 27 because they thought that Andy Reid was looking for the next Alex Smith, Donovan McNabb, like function within the West Coast offense, 3-step drop, spit the ball out, play within rhythm, timing, all of that. So they're thinking, well, out of Mahomes and Watson, probably Watson. He's still pretty unconventional, but that's kind of where they thought he'd be leaning. They, like you said, the parameters for the trade were all set beforehand. So Mahomes is available. They execute the trade. The Chiefs take Patrick Mahomes, and Terry Pagula just says out loud in the draft room, "Well, Andy Reid got his Brett Favre."
That's what he
And
said. Yeah.
to this day, Patrick Mahomes has haunted Terry Pagula's Buffalo Bills 4 out of the last 5 years. Playoff losses. It's unbelievable. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. That's why we all watch the NFL. It's high drama. But yeah, getting back to the Chiefs and how they were built. Excellent points all around. I mean, we're talking about Hall of Famers, pillars, some of the best players of a generation that he brought in. The question I guess I'd posit for you is through people, when you try to figure out why does John Dorsey get let go, I think a big part of it is like the power, right? Andy Reid wanting to kind of have his guy when he's got to say all of that. You hear that maybe John Dorsey isn't the easiest person to work with, like his communication style maybe is lacking or not as smooth, preferable. It's a lot of smoke. I'm just not really sure where the fire is. Like, how does John Dorsey just get unceremoniously kicked out of these buildings when he's drafted so well? I mean, even in Cleveland, like the Baker Mayfield select, yeah, he's not Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, but I mean, nobody's thrown more touchdowns the last 2 years than Baker Mayfield. And they drove John Dorsey out of town, Elliott Wolf, all those guys. Then they drove Baker Mayfield out of town as a franchise. It's mind
It's,
blowing. But why wouldn't a team want this guy in their
oh,
building running the show?
he's 64 years old now. I mean, he should be getting interviews. Who cares about age? You're only going to be in these jobs 5 years or something. You win and you're out. That's just the way it goes. But all right, the only thing I can think about, he spent his whole playing career and 20, 25 years of scouting in Green Bay where there is no owner. And he saw how Tom Bratz initially, and then how Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson, how operated. They didn't have to suck up to an owner, so to speak. They didn't have to worry about, you know,
The
specialties.
politics of it all.
Yeah, and all the little treats and going over at practice to talk to the owner's kids and nephews and uncles and all this. There's none of that in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Bob Harlan didn't expect that. I don't think Mark Murphy expected that. And so Dorsey came from that school where it was all football, man, 100%. And all this superfluous junk was absent. And that's one of the reasons the Packers have had this great model and have won a ton of games for a generation. All right, he goes to Cleveland. The Hunt family's got a great reputation, especially the dad, Clark Sr. Tremendous reputation there. And now he's dealing with his son, Clark Jr. I don't know much about this guy. I mean, I've never spoken to him. I've seen him on TV at these trophy presentations. You can think what you will of all that. None of it, most of it's meaningless. Dorsey can be a real people person. I mean, he can be fun, sociable, chatty. Yeah, he's into his personnel and his scouting, but he has all those people skills too. Brett Veach had been brought into Philly by Andy Reid during his 14-year tenure there, just kind of a gopher. And he wanted to watch tape and read. And then Veach advanced. Now, I don't know Veach either, Tyler. Veach advanced in the Eagles. And then when Reid got the job in Kansas City in 2013, Veach came with him. And at this point, when this trade was made, Veach was director of college scouting, maybe some kind of, he had had a title. Reid had given him a title. And Will Lewis was the pro personnel director of the Chiefs at that time. Dorsey later fired him 2 weeks before he got let go himself by Hunt. So if Lewis has an axe to grind, it would be towards Dorsey. But Lewis told me for this story, he said, the whole draft, setting the board, that was Dorsey. Then Dorsey would meet with Andy and do their deal together. The one thing that made it a little bit different was Andy's relationship with Veach. Veach, who was very, very, very close to Andy, would meet with Andy almost on a daily basis. It was kind of an awkward situation. Veach was like the coaching assistant in Philly before he became a personnel guy. He was always Andy's guy. So Andy had a different insight on the draft board because he would meet with Veach all the time. It wasn't just that he was relying on Dorsey to give him information and get him up to speed. So when push came to shove and their contracts were up and Reid wanted an extension in the worst way, and he probably presented Veach as Dorsey's logical successor, and Clark Hunt, do I go with Dorsey? And maybe Andy said, I can't work with Dorsey anymore. I have no idea about that. Wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know that. And they non-renewed Dorsey, let him go, and Veach stepped in, and he's been there ever since. And I read you the drafting record in the last 7 years, right? Now, I haven't analyzed their work in UFA trade. I'm sure they've done a lot of good moves in there, okay? But the guts of the team, the core, the Hall of Fame core, is not from Veach and Reid. It's from Dorsey. Okay, and then in Cleveland, maybe he took that job too quick, 6 months after he was fired. Maybe it's like Ray Rhodes getting bounced out in Philly and then taking the job in Green Bay a month later. I'm sure he was hurting after the Kansas City dismissal. Well, anyway, he took the job with Jimmy Haslam, the truck stop magnate, and it went for a couple of years. Again, I think it was the same situation. Just that's a hard family to deal with, and the selection of Kitchens was, I think, was the real good excuse to get him out of town, even though he had drafted well, as we just discussed.
I was around that Browns team a decent amount into the Freddie Kitchens era of 1.5 years. But I can remember everybody being really excited about that team. Hell, I remember anointing the Cleveland Browns a Super Bowl contender. I mean, I took the bait, hook, line, sinker, right to the lip, and bring me onto the boat and fillet me right there. I was all freaking in on those because the talent was unbelievable. It was a good hard lesson, covering this sport on. I hate the word culture, but it does matter. How a team is kind of bonded together, and I guess Brandon Bean called it like the great chemistry experiment. You've got to have the right elements. They didn't have it. But I talked to Freddie Kitchens for a while before that season. I remember being excited about this guy. I mean, he pulled a lot of good stuff out of Baker Mayfield as a rookie. I don't even remember that one play where Mayfield, like, he flipped it to himself. I think it was like a shotgun, and he kind of just like threw the ball up to himself, caught it. I'd never seen anything like that before. Schematically, there was some cool stuff to get excited about. It wasn't, my point is, it wasn't as outlandish as we make it out to be today in the moment.
Yeah,
In the
right,
moment, it made a lot of sense. The
right.
Brown, Baker, he's from the Southern guy, Southern drawl, wants the players to be themselves, all that kind of stuff that is championed in other buildings. And obviously, it was total disaster. But Some GMs get multiple chances. Some GMs fail miserably at the top of drafts, fail miserably with their head coaching hires, and they keep their jobs. And I think a lot of the time it's a hard thing to prove. A lot of the time is that ass kissing that you're referring to. Knowing who to talk to, knowing who to please, knowing what to say and when to say it to these owners are fans. I mean, there's a lot of bad owners. They're fans. They're easily persuaded. They want their ass kissed. They want to be told that they're geniuses. And when you're wondering how GM X sticks with a team for X amount of years, there's some of that sprinkled in there, right? And if you can sell yourself to an owner, and the owner doesn't want to go through a whole search, what I'm saying is, yeah, maybe the people skills are perfectly fine for John Dorsey and some of these other smart football people who aren't retained, but like even if they weren't, who would give a damn? Like, isn't it about finding the best possible players to build a champion? Shouldn't that be like, as an owner, shouldn't you want some no men, some no women in your inner circle to keep you straight? Look out for your blind spots. Those are the best owners. And the Chiefs are obviously doing something right. I mean, they've been winning Super Bowls. It's not a Chiefs thing. I'm saying in general, yeah, Jerry Jones just had another exceptionally disastrous press conference. I was howling. I mean, just talking about glory holes again. And I mean, Brian Schottenheimer's sitting right next to him and he's saying, I know it's not a glamorous hire. I know this isn't what everybody
Really?
wants. I'm thinking, what's going through Brian Schottenheimer's head right now? I mean, what a subservient, safe hire out there in Dallas. They never cease to amaze. But I mean, I've been told that Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones, I mean, their inner circle, it's just all people tell them exactly what they want. Nobody's going to speak up or you're going to get kicked out. So, oh my gosh. We make football out to be a lot more complicated than it is sometimes.
All right, Tyler. Can I give a few more impressions from some of these games on Sunday, the two of them?
Yes, let's get into it.
Let's talk about the Hall of Fame tight end Travis Kelce, right? You know, Tyler, just sitting there watching on TV, I mean, all these years, I've just kind of watched him run routes and always get open. I mean, and he's unbelievable after the catch, and he's worthy of the Hall and his number of catches and all this. But, people have looked askance at his blocking. So I really watched it Sunday. I mean, it is comical. And his actions on the field, they are comical. He comes pulling around the corner one time and he ran into Milano and he just got knocked on his ass like 4 or 5 yards backward. Like, he's a lot bigger than Milano. What is he, 255? Milano's 2.25. And he just got just destroyed, man. All right. Then he's a non-contact guy. He wants no part of anything. He'll just kind of semi-shield a little bit, but in terms of getting down and dirty and never really hitting anybody, like we see Tucker Kraft and we see Laporta, Brock, I mean, he's probably the worst blocking tight end in the league. I can't imagine anybody who's worse. All right, then Hamlin hits Mahomes on the touchdown over in the corner there, right? Hamlin hit him. It was fine.
I know where this is going.
So Kelce runs over there as if, I'm going to be the big tough guy here, right? What is he doing? And he gets in this scrap and he pushes. He knows how far he can go without getting the flag. Oh, the big tough guy, big Travis Kelce. What a farce. All these players will just be laughing at him. They see the tape 100 times more than I see it. Oh, my God. All right. Then there's another disgusting act. He misses a block horribly. And then he has the gall to wade in there and start shoving bills. I mean, if you miss a block, you want to tuck your tail and walk back to the huddle and get the hell out of there. This guy, he knows no shame, the chutzpah of the thing, and he's a non-contact guy. Tyler, I just couldn't believe it. Have you seen this over the years from this guy?
That was amazing. I want to hear you just talk about Travis Kelce's complete inability to get down and dirty for about, the next hour or so. Um, I will say I was not able to get a hold of Travis Kelce for my book, The Blood and Guts: How Tight Ends Save Football, available wherever books are sold.
Did you try?
I tried. The Chiefs unhelpful, Kelsey's inner circle unhelpful. And there are a couple chapters in here, like Kellen Winslow. I didn't talk to Kellen Winslow, but I talked to a ton of those Charger players and coaches and that era. So I mean, it could have been done, but to get a tight end from this era of football, the modern era, and that I kind of take readers through history from Mike Ditka, the origins of the position itself, in 1960 to today, it was a no-brainer to go with George Kittle for today's tight end. He is blood and guts. He is the sport. He is in the trenches kicking ass, burying you. I mean, it's to his being. That's his identity as a football player. I'm always just blown away that we look at receiving numbers and we just assume that Travis Kelce is the best tight end today. To me, it's George Kittle. It's George Kittle in San Francisco. He is the best tight end post Gronkowski, who's the greatest tight end ever, because Kittle gives you all of the above. He's a hell of a receiver. He'll make plays through the passing game, regardless of whoever his quarterback is, by the way. He doesn't have Patrick Mahomes. Uh, but also in the run game. I mean, when you look at all the crazy stuff that Kyle Shanahan has done in the run game, Kittle is a weapon. He is just shot out of a cannon at all of these angles to take out linebackers, DBs, laughs his ass off when he does it. He's diabolical. I mean, he'll bury you and laugh. I mean, he's not getting his ass kicked, doing nothing and taunting somebody. So quite a distinction between Travis Kelce and George Kittle. I'm very glad that you pointed that out because one of the and part of it is fair. One of the criticisms I got with my book was like, "Where's Travis Kelce?" And he's mentioned throughout it, but no, he didn't. He didn't get the modern chapter. It goes to George Kittle. So
All
is
right,
Taylor
Ty.
Swift disgusted? When Taylor's watching this game at Arrowhead from high above, and she sees her man not giving his all, just getting blown to bits, and then acting like he was the aggressor. Does this inspire a song or two? Does this have Taylor questioning some things? Right about, and I don't know. Does Taylor propose to Travis? Is that how this works? I know traditionally it's the other way around. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Oh man, now I'm gonna have the Swifties coming at me, Bob. You're not allowed to go down that road.
No.
Bring them on, baby.
All right, Ty. Let's go to a couple ex-Packers, okay? Um, let's start with starting. He's a starter in this game. Defensive tackle Mike Pennell.
Still
Mike
going,
was
Mike Pennell.
Mike was in Green Bay 14, 15, and 16. My last 3 years on the beat, and I talked to this guy dozens of times. He lacked confidence, and I thought he was really good based on the summer stuff and the one-on-ones and the inside drill. And I was talking to him. I mean, it kind of ended up like me trying to pump up his confidence. I mean, here this guy's 6'4", 330. I was saying, Mike, you got a real chance here now. I was talking to him. This went on many times. Mike Pennell, Colorado State Pueblo. He's been with 5 teams. He's 33 years old. He's played 138 games in the league, started 25. He's got 5 sacks in his career. I thought he played really good in this game. He's had a hell of a surge on that failed 2-point run by Allen. All right, now let's go to Oren Burks.
3 of his 5 sacks this season, by the way, Mike Pennell.
Oh, 3 of his 5 this year.
Okay. Yeah.
He's a gentle giant, and I think he's hard to move, Tyler, and he stood the test of time. Do you believe that? This is his 11th year. Okay, Pueblo, D2, man. Okay, let's go to Oren Burks. Drafted in the 3rd round by Brian Gutekunst. I was all over this guy for not being physical enough, missed tackles, weak in the box. I was bad. And then, I don't know, did he leave as a free agent or did he get cut? I don't know. I think he left as a free agent to the Niners, and now he's with the Eagles. And he's playing because Dean out for the year with a knee. And Burks, I saw him now for a couple, 3 games this year. He's pretty good. He's really improved in years 5, 6, 7. Got to really hand him a lot of credit. This guy saw what he was deficient at. He's not soft anymore. He had a nice sack. He had the forced fumble on Eckler. He's a pretty good player, Tyler. And that defense is running pretty well without Dean. Oren Burks. You remember Oren a little bit?
I
That's
do.
after your time.
It was after my time on the beat, but try to watch him closely, and he kind of goes from jag backup, borderline bust. What the hell is he to a starter on a Super Bowl team? It's amazing. But he was flying around in that title
Yeah.
game, making plays.
All right, let's go to the Chiefs' O-line. I mean, you remember the problems they had last year, and so they thought they handled it. They drafted Wanya Morris in the third round in 2023. And this year, in the second round, they drafted Kingsley Suamatea. So they're not happy with Jawan Taylor, who was an unrestricted guy from Jacksonville at right tackle. He's had a million penalties. And they were going to go with Morris or Suamatea at left. This is really the future of this season. Let's face it. All right. So they start Suamatea for 2 games. My notes are here somewhere. Yeah. And he's not up to stuff. The rookie from BYU, I believe. Okay. So then Morris, the guy from Oklahoma, gets the start, and he starts about 11 games, and he's not doing it either. They get DJ Humphries, the old #1 pick from the Cardinals. And I don't know, he was like a cap casualty, and I don't know if he played this year or not, but there was talk that he would. But instead, Andy Reid made a massive decision, and he took the all-pro left guard Joe Thuney, the expatriate, and they put him at left tackle. Now, he's about 6'3", horribly undersized for the position, and Thuney's held up. You know, he's done good, Tyler. Now, what do you do at left guard? Wow. Whew. Mike Caliendo. This guy's from Brookfield East High School in Wisconsin, suburban Milwaukee, played at Western Michigan. I saw him play live 2 years ago in the Central Michigan, Western Michigan rivalry at Waldo Stadium, Kalamazoo. And I watched him that night quite a bit because he was a late round pick free agent. Boy, I thought he was really limited, Tyler. Didn't move good. He had been like a 4-year starter. I mean, he was a tough guy, but there was limitations. And I was right. He wasn't drafted. That was 3 years ago. And now Caliendo started. When they moved Thuney out, he moved into the lineup. In this game, he gave up a knockdown to Ed Oliver, who was on fire in this game. Now, maybe he got moved, Tyler. I don't know. But Oliver made some amazing plays in this game. He was on fire. He had a false start. He had a tripping penalty. He gave up a sack to Jordan Phillips when he got destroyed. But all in all, at least he hung in there and for an offense that got 32 points. So Andy Reid is getting it done with an undersized, out-of-position left tackle and a free agent, undrafted guy from Western Michigan, the MAC, at left guard. That's pretty good coaching, Tyler.
And that was a hell of a rundown. Now you got me thinking I'm too hard on Big Ed, Bob. I'm all in on Monas's analogy of a soccer goalie guessing on the penalty kicks. Because you do see that when he misses, it's a bad miss.
Was it? Yeah.
But he made some plays. He did.
He did.
Especially after some letdown playoff games.
Just real quick, he stuffed Trey Smith, the massive right guard, gain of 1. He stuffed Caliendo, no gain. He had another stuff, no gain. He had a knockdown against Caliendo, and he had a knockdown just because of his burst in the open field. Down in, down out. I can't say I watched the whole thing, but there was some flashes jumping off the tape.
Yeah.
All right, so Tyler, should we talk about Mekhi Becton, the 11th pick in 2020 by the Jets?
Yeah, let's do it. It's an interesting.
He had
guy
the
right
weight
there.
problem. He was the 370 guy, remember? And I led the draft series with him. What college? Louisville? Becton? I can't remember.
Yes.
Louisville.
Yes.
All right. So I've watched him in a couple, 3 games recently. I watched him pretty closely. I mean, I know what Lane Johnson is. I didn't want to really study him anymore. I looked at the young center, Maeda over at left tackle. My God, can he move in the open field? 7th round pick, Maeda. Holy man. But Becton, I don't buy it. Man, you do any movement in front of this guy like Oliver was doing, or no, not Oliver, uh, Allen, the guy from Washington, he can be beat. He had a missed assignment. He missed Davis on the goal line. I don't know. I mean, he's better than he was. He's better inside than he was at tackle, like for the Jets. But he's going to have problems. If Chris Jones is over him, whew, look out.
Hmm.
And one more, Tyler. I don't know. Damar Hamlin. You know, I can't remember exactly. Didn't he run it around 4.6, 4.58, something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
And then he's gone through the tragedy. He can't really run or cover, can he, Tyler? You've seen him a lot more than me.
So, Damar Hamlin, you've got to separate I mean, as Josh Allen called it, one of the greatest stories ever,
Yep.
sports or otherwise.
Yep.
Dies and comes back to life on a field. I was there in Cincinnati. I'll never forget that night. I think we all were forced to kind of reconcile our support of this sport in that moment in a way. I don't. What happens if that goes the other way? You can't even imagine. For him to throw himself back on a football field and want to play this game after his heart stopped, it's remarkable. So if we're just going to talk about him though, this season as the Bills' starting safety, and I've talked to Damar multiple times this season, he is full of confidence. I mean, his goal is to be one of the best safeties in football. He did find his way around the ball a few times, some interceptions, picked up, he had the sack forced fumble on Lamar Jackson that just, flipped the divisional playoff round game on its head. So those plays matter, but you could see, the Chiefs and some good offenses with the best quarterbacks trying to exploit him in the secondary. And now he's a free agent. I would assume the Bills try to upgrade there. My sneaking suspicion is that they go heavy defense in this draft. I feel like after Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman with their first pick, back-to-back drafts, it just feels like, no, granted, everybody after Keon Coleman was pretty much defense other than Ray Davis. I feel like they're going to try to upgrade at that spot because of the reasons that you'll probably get into right now.
All right, should we go to the McGinn memory, Tyler? You want to?
Yes. Yeah, we can get, yeah, let's get right to the McGinn memory. That's a good idea.
Right. Okay. Let me get some stuff here.
Get those papers all shuffled together, will you?
Yep. So we'll discuss the Super Bowl, okay, Tyler? Mm-hmm. And I covered 33 of the 58. And let's go to the first one I ever covered. Raiders 38, Washington 9 at the Big Sombrero, Tampa, Florida, okay? In that game, the Raiders had 9 Hall of Famers. The Redskins had 6. And what do I want to talk about? Okay, so, I was at the Green Bay Press-Gazette at the time. And so, when we sent a guy to the Super Bowl, the object was to do a lot of stories that are Packer related. And some people might remember this from 40 years ago. I can't believe this. That's 40 years ago. I wrote a story when I was in Tampa. I went over to the 23rd floor condo over Hillsborough Bay, occupied by Mike Butler, chief, the defensive end for the Pack. And Mike had played 6 years with Green Bay, and he did not play in '83. They tried to trade him. He signed with the USFL Tampa Bay Bandits. And there was a big controversy. The Packers defense fell apart in '83, an 8-8 season. It got Bart Starr fired. And Butler had an out in his contract that even though in August, when he signed with the Bandits, the other league, that contract allowed him to play in the NFL for the '83 season. He was more than willing to come back and play for Green Bay, where he had been a real pillar of the defense for 6 years. First round pick from Kansas. He's pretty damn good power defensive end in a 4-3. So I went over to his house. He had never discussed the Packers or anything in 5 months since the thing fell apart. And he claims he would have gone back to the Packers, and Bart Starr called him, and Bob Harlan called him, and they were all set. But then the team went out on Starr telephoned him, James Lofton telephoned him, Bob Harlan called him, defensive coordinator John Meyer called him. But then 2 days later, the thing got scared off because of legalities, and it never happened. Here's the money. The Packers offered him, he says, 4 years, Tyler, for $1.09 million. He signed with the Bandits. 4 years, about 1.2, he told me. First 2 years guaranteed, and that was big, not all of it. And Mike, I call that a posh 23rd floor condo development. The quote, this is the first time I've ever said anything derogatory about the Packers. Bart once thanked me for the way I didn't go out bitching to the press. You know, I'd be freezing my butt off up in Madison today if I could. He wanted to play. And regarding Starr, what did he say? I never saw eye to eye with his goody two-shoes attitude at times. On the playing field, he wanted us to be cordial with the referees, not to be screaming, to be the opposite of what Oakland is, to be the ones with halos over our heads. That's what Mike said. So that was interesting. Now let's go to this game, okay? So I was pretty impressionable at that point, Tyler. And were you ever in the Big Sombrero down in Tampa?
No, just Raymond James.
So one of the locker rooms, Tyler, the visiting one that I was always covering the Packers in, and that's where the Raiders were. It was right off a little semi-tunnel in the corner. And then the door was right there, and it was so cramped, it was beyond belief. Smaller than high school's locker rooms I was in Upper Michigan, man. This thing. So I went in there, and I'm on, a PM paper. I had no deadline. So I basically followed Al Davis around the locker room like a little puppy. And the place was hot, and just temperature was 68, wind at 20, and they blew out the Redskins, And he just walked around, and he kept saying, just win, baby, and he's hugging guys and just jacked. And here's what he said on CBS TV that day. 2 years ago, when we came to Los Angeles, I really believed that the greatness of the Raiders would be in its future. With all the great teams we've had, I think today, this organization, this team, this coaching staff dominated so decisively that two things must be said. That's quite a sentence, huh, Ty? Not only in my opinion, are you the greatest Raider team of all time? I think you rank with the great teams of all time that have ever played any professional sport. So, and they dominated this game, Tyler. They stopped John Riggins, and Jim Plunkett was a born-again quarterback. He did a great job. Marcus Allen, I call it the greatest running play in Super Bowl history in the book, 20 carries for 191. Including that touchdown of 74. You've seen it a million times, right, Tyler? Oh, of course. We all have. The Hogs, they got overrun. Ron Wolf said the MVP of this game was the 240-pound nose tackle, Mr. Reggie Kinlaw. He played great in that game. He screwed up the Hogs by moving on every snap. Theismann was sacked 6 times. So I interviewed 6 people, one of whom was Larry Peccatillo. This is for the book. The defensive coordinator for the Redskins. And he and Richie Pettibone ran that Redskin defense. After the game, they refused to take the bus home from Tampa Stadium. And you remember, and you remember Dale Mabry, the big street outside the Big Sombrero, Tyler? Dale Mabry, man. They walked 6 or 7 miles through the chilly Florida night back to the team hotel. It was the only time in Peccatillo's 40-year coaching career that he had forsaken the team bus. Our wives wondered where we were, Larry said. Then we got humiliated the way we were. And Richie and I said, screw it. God forbid if anybody would have said Redskins suck or anything like that. It was an ass kicking. It really was. So that's it. That was the first of 29. 29? No, 33. Yeah, 33. And it was a learning experience. And Al Davis, man, R.I.P. He was really something, Tyler.
And let me just say it. If you don't own this book, if you're watching video, there it is. The Ultimate Super Bowl Book by Bob McGinn. Get yourself a copy. It is a Bible for you these 2 weeks. I mean, the amount of insight from players and coaches on each Super Bowl is mind blowing. It's the ultimate bathroom book, of course, but it's the ultimate living room book, airplane book. Have it wherever because you can jump around. It's great. I'm just looking at the Redskins Raiders Super Bowl that you're referencing here, and seeing Lester Hayes at left cornerback for the Raiders just makes me want to call him again. That is the if there's ever an excuse to call anybody for anything, Lester Hayes cracks me up to this day.
Really?
The way he talks and enunciates things with emphasis and hyperbole, it's amazing. Like I talked to him for Blood and Guts and about Dave Casper. So Dave Casper was like a mini chapter within the chapters, and he was describing how Dave Casper. All right, now I gotta find it. He was trying to describe why Dave Casper was a lot like Travis Kelce, and oh man, now you're gonna have to give me a second. Hold on.
While you're looking, Tyler, I'm going to add this. The corners were Lester Hayes and Mike Haynes, and they were up against the little Smurfs, Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
Art Monk was no Smurf, and then Alvin Garrett. They pressed those guys, bump and run. Tyler, you could get away with murder back then, man. And they just totally knocked out Theismann's targets. It was mayhem. It was great. It was awesome to watch. It was really fun. Lester Hayes crouched in that crouching position, just ready to maul, wasn't he? All right, T.
All right, so this is at the end of the Dave Casper mini chapter. He said, this is what I wrote. Through the ruthless 70s, nobody could get under Dave Casper's skin. And when Lester Hayes watches football today, he takes tablets upon tablets of notes. The way Casper used to spin safeties around in practice, quote, as if they're a top, end quote, is best reflected in Travis Kelce. Those feet are making Lester Hayes awfully suspicious. Quote, you know what I believe? Travis Kelce is Dave's son. He made that boy. Check to see if Travis Kelce's mama dated Dave. So man, yeah, I got to write something that gives me an excuse to call Lester. He is,
and all that stickum they had all over.
Oh yeah, just covered all the stickum.
Yeah, the silver and black, baby.
Beautiful. All right, Bob, that was a delight as always. Thank you so much for recording a pre-Super Bowl pod. Get us set for the week as we transition into all things Chiefs, Eagles, and that's a topic I feel like probably isn't going to be written a lot about, isn't going to be discussed much, but John Dorsey laying the foundation for the Chiefs. Unbelievable, those drafts. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and reading. We'll catch you soon. I'm sure we'll talk Bob into another one of these. I got to throw that in there. We'll lure him into a pod. He's staring at me, thinking, "The hell you will."
I got to get after the Senior Bowl, Tyler.
I know. Okay, get back to film, will you? All right, we'll see you, everyone.